My hair looks like Cher, circa Moonstruck. Coincidentally, today we are going to be talking about the moon. Hey everybody, it's Lennon, coming to you from the Big Mama Chair. Alright, so a while back, Natalia over at Ouroboros had a hashtag going around. That was hashtag #WhyMoon. And she wanted to know why we were all obsessed with it, particularly females. And it got me thinking, I'm obsessed with the moon. I have things to say about this. But it was more than that, okay? Particularly because I actually do rituals, and I very much coincide my spirituality with the moon phases. So it did send me on kind of a research journey, okay, to see why, like, where maybe this had started, okay? So I've got some source material here, some notes, and some giant books, and we'll read some passages, maybe some poetry, whatever, right? Okay, so first things first, right? If we look at the sun, what happens? You can't look at it, can you? No, they tell you not to, right? But you can look at the moon for hours, right? It's a reflected light, so there's nothing harmful about looking at it. So that probably played a huge role in the mystery of it all, right? We had these two going around, right? And one was a light you really couldn't look at, and then one at night was a light you could look at it. You could see the craters. You could it was there and you could look at it, right? So that's the first thing. Now, before solar calendars, which we are in today, okay, they used the moon in kind of a timepiece, like as a way of measuring time, right? Particularly women. They would perform rituals. Mostly this would be like priestesses, prophetesses, witches, right? And they would perform these rituals to coincide with the phases of the moon, because they knew, like in a month span, that these would keep happening. These same phases would keep happening. So they used that as sort of like a clock. So when they couldn't use the sun, right? Because it's just every day, there's no change. So in a moon, in the month cycle, okay, they use the moon. And like I said, particularly women would perform rituals to coincide with these phases of the moon. So when the patriarch came, okay, so that's the male deity, right? The monotheized deity, like one God, right? And it was a man, okay? It kind of killed that reverence that these women and their rituals and everything they played out, okay? There was a reverence there to the moon and her healing, to her moon and her many phases, to the moon and her cycles, right? The way she cycled through time. And the reverence there was basically suppressed by the patriarch. So we've kind of lost touch with that, with the fact that back in the ancient times, people revered that aspect of the duality, okay? They loved the sun because of its need, and okay, so it's direct light, so that went to agriculture, right? But then they revered the feminine aspect of that as well, and we forgot to do that somewhere along the line. Like I said, and maybe in the patriarch, we've suppressed that reverence that everyone had to the female aspect of this cosmic duality, okay? Because it is a duality. So if we look at terms in duality, okay, if we looked at terms in the the way it was revered, okay, the cosmic duality, we could say that the sun was the direct light, but then the moon was that refracted light, right? Again, can't look at the sun, but you can look at the moon. So there were direct keywords that would come down into a point, right? So we're going to dive a little, we're going to shovel, right? And to me, that would mean that if the sun was the direct light, then that would be like the assimilation, right? But then the moon would be the opposite of that in a dualistic type of a sense, right? So then that would be understanding, receptivity, intuition. Intuition, I like that word. Now, another thing that back in the time before written record, okay, according to some of my sources, ritual, okay, in Sanskrit is a word for menses. Sounds familiar. Sounds like menstruation, doesn't it? Which is exactly what they did. Okay, the moon was linked to a woman's cycle, menstruation cycle. And they would say that in menstruation, okay, that the new moon would be a time like the dark moon would be, not the dark moon, that's something different. The new moon would be the time of be associated with menstruation, right? So if you think about if you menstruate in the new moon, then you would be fertile, full, right? Now, I'm not saying that women do that today, right? But then let's look a little bit about the McClintock theory, okay? Now, the McClintock theory is that women, there was a study done, that women who were in close proximity to one another would sync up, okay? Their cycles would sync up. Which, if you think about it, is just like a phenomenon, okay? Now, they never could prove any kind of, like, there was no scientific basis for it, right? But if you thought about most women, I've experienced this, I know women who have experienced this. If you think about, we think of it in terms of like a connection, right? We're connecting to that other female. But what if it is not us connecting to this other female, but us getting back to what the ancients thought, us getting back to the moon cycles? So we would sync up, right? And let's say it's a whole clan of dorm sisters, right? That's a lot of women. Now, if we were to all be synced up, right, in this dorm, that's a whole bunch of cosmic female energy, like a gravitational force almost of energy. And what if, like, we're thinking of it wrong? We're thinking of it in terms of connecting with these women, which is happening, right? You're connecting, you're making that connection. But then what if it's not just you and another female? This is all females getting back to her, right? Getting back to the female aspect of the moon, getting back and cycling all together, okay? And that is a pretty profound thought when you think of it. Let's just all sync up our menses and just throw some cosmic energy around. That's a pretty big thought. I like that thought, okay? Now, if we thought about it in terms of like Latin, like, okay, so the Latin term for the Latin term menses means month, okay? Monthly. So this is starting to make a lot of sense, right? This is stories going back generations, right? And I think what we have ultimately done is in all the females that have gone before us, right? Even pre-written times, right? Before we wrote things down. These types of stories and associations and connections that the females were making with the moon and syncing up, maybe they were syncing up in their menstruation huts, whatever the case was, I think what happened was throughout history, throughout time, women were passing these stories down through song, through story, through grandmothers, And what that ultimately did is it connected all of us. It connected all women to this, like I said, cosmic energy, this force field that we seem to have within us. Now think about the dynamic of that. If the females at age 11 or whichever age are starting their cycles, if they knew that by having that cycle, it is connecting them to all women and ultimately the moon itself, and this connection to her is directly connecting her with all females that have come before her, don't you think that she would not find that gross, not find that derogatory in any way? She would find that there would be some reverence there. And I think ultimately that's what these stories and songs are they're trying to do that. They're trying to connect us. They're trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us that we are all connected and that we all have this cosmic energy inside of us. And it needs to be revered. It needs to be pulled out. It needs to be pushed forth. Okay? And not suppressed and not oppressed. And I think ultimately that's why, especially females, have been obsessed with it. We're coming back into that connection. Now, I'm going to read something from one of my favorite resource materials. It's called The Once and Future Goddess by Eleanor Godin, okay? And it talks about the words, the Latin terms, which is where I got that. But then it says, women's periodic bleeding was a cosmic event, like the cycles of the moon and the waxing and waning of the tides. We have forgotten that women were the conduit to the sacred mystery of life and death. And that is also a profound thought. We are a conduit? If women and if girls knew that, this would be a connection across lifetimes. This would be a connection across generations. Now, I want to read a poem, okay? Love poetry, by Sappho. And she was a Greek poetess. She lived in like the 600 BC. Okay, I'm taking a guess here because I didn't write it down. And she often wrote her poems to be sung. So back in that time, they would be sung maybe by the music of a lyre, okay, which is like a harp, right? So this poem is about the moon, and she correlated it with a her. The stars about the lovely moon fade back and vanish very soon, when round and full her silver face swims in sight and lights all space. Swims into sight. Yet another distinction, the fish. Right? The fish is associated with female. All of these female attributes are coming down through. These symbols genuinely are telling a story. And the story is, we're the conduit of sacred energy. Okay? Now to end, I want to talk about like what I do with the moon. Now I am very much a spiritual, I am a spiritual person, and I do perform rituals. Not in a neo-pagan way, but I've always done rituals to coincide with the moon phases. Mostly the new and the full. Now, in the new moon, that is actually, coincidentally, the opposite of what they say you're supposed to, like, on your menstruation cycle. So during the new moon is when I ovulate. So I'm the most energetic at the dark moon. Okay, at the new moon, I should say. And that's the time that I am out dancing. I dance. I am a ritualistic dancer. And that means that I perform certain vibrational movements and dances to connect myself with the earth, to connect myself with the moon, to connect myself with the sky. And then the full moon okay, is the opposite of that. The full moon for me is a time of menstruation. So that's my inward time. Now, all of time, okay, so they say the full moon was associated with lunacy, right? You're crazy at the full moon. But that's my time of if I'm going to get a prophetic dream, it's going to be then. Yeah, I'm getting some profound energy with that. I'm going inward, right? I'm going down into my subconscious. I'm shadow working. I'm doing whatever it is to pull that cosmic energy to the conscious, right? That's what I do. And so I do directly correlate those rituals and those which to me, it could mean my dancing, okay? This is like, I listen to certain music at certain frequencies that will, it's like, you know when you listen to a song and you cannot help but move? That's what it is, right? And usually I do it under the light of the moon. And then I journal. That's also a ritual because I only do it, well, there's certain aspects of journaling that you do every day, like soul searching. But then from a ritualistic standpoint, I do the most I can do as far as journal and soul searching during my time of my inward time, which is at the full moon. So that's not what you would think would be when you would perform those rituals, but that's when I do it. Now, they say there's crystal healing, and they say that there's candle magic, there's all kinds of magic you can do to correlate with the moon. I do very much have crystals all over the place. I do cleanse my crystals and my tarot decks under the full moon, which, even though that's a time for my introspection, it's still that's a cleansing light in my practice. So I do clean my tarot decks, I do clean crystals, and sometimes I make moon water if I know that in the coming month I'll be doing some type of spell work with it, whether I use it in cooking or just to water my plants. Sometimes I'll have some moon water out to cleanse that as well. And that's all I do with the moon. Now, if we let's look for a minute at moon tarot cards. Okay, so this is the Thoth moon card. And this, okay, these tidal waves, right? This is the subconscious, right? What you can't see, what's not in your conscious, okay? So it's not out here in the light. Either light. It's not in the sunlight or the moonlight, right? And Crowley did such a great job with this, okay? Because this is exactly what the moon card should be. It's about this light that's in your subconscious. You don't even know it's there. It's subconscious, right? But you're constantly trying to pull it out. Now, you could be faced with these obstacles, right? You're going to be, because it might be stuff that's threatening to drag you down, okay, and keep you down in these waters. But it's a cycle. You're constantly having to bring it about, right? And then if we look at also the Rider-Waite-Smith, okay? Now, there's a dog and a wolf, right? So you think getting back to your primal self, that would be the wolf, right? And then the dog's more of that friendly, that, the man's best friend type of like passive, right? So it's both. It's controlling, right? It's almost controlling. And then there's this crawfish type thing. And he's in the waters of the subconscious, right? But he's not just in the waters, he's coming out. And then there's a path that leads into this darkness, and you don't know where it's going. You can't see, right? And I thought that was these yods, okay? I call them yods. I think that's what they're called. Are shining down on this path. You see the path is like this yellow brick road, right? The path is shined. So the crawfish needs to go onto the path as you, right? So bringing stuff up in this illusion of the subconscious, right? So that's, in my opinion, what the moon card in tarot symbolizes. And then we look at this. This is the Jacques Fayville tarot. So this is the French Marseille tarot, okay? And you see a crone, okay? This is an old lady, an older woman. and she's got a spindle, right? So she's weaving. And you think, okay, well, are we associating the moon with the crone? Because we associate the moon with all female aspects. So who is she, right? Well, some research that I've looked up says that she could be the crone aspect of Diana, who has fashioned a spindle out of what was once her bow. That is a profound thought. She was a huntress, okay? A goddess. And knew in her time, when she, in her own way, she knew my hunting days are over. Well, she's not dead yet. She just can't hunt. She's got bad knees, right? So what she do? She's using her tools. She's using her tools, and she's still going to go. She's still going to do things. She's weaving, which, if you look at weaving, is a sign of creation, right? So she has ultimately almost full turned her life. Full turn. Okay, so virgin, mother, crone, and then she's about to create again. She's about to become the virgin all over again, right? In this cycle. So that's what she's doing in this card, which I thought was an interesting take. And so I want to thank Natalia for coming up with this hashtag. I could have dove so deep with this and researched it and pulled out all the books that I love about it, but I didn't. And I chose to only make this this long. But I do. I want to thank her because it took me on a journey to figure out why I was so obsessed with it. And I know ultimately that's what she wanted. And so I do think that we all females are trying to get back to this cosmic idea, or this idea that we are the conduit. So thank you. I hope y'all all have a great day.